Well, I picked the worst possible time to start doing this YouTube channel, as it's been like negative 28 degrees in the Chicago area, which is where I'm at. And the shop doesn't have any heat, and the electric circuit is ran off of like an extension cord on like a really crappy outlet. So there's no way to keep it nice in here, and I wasn't about to come out here in that weather. But anyway, I digress. It's a nice warm 30 something degrees, so I figured I could get a little bit of work done today. So a couple things. I got a couple new parts in. So this is the new coolant flange. You may remember in the last video I said how the one that's currently in there is broken. So this will replace that. And I'm choosing to just go with a plastic one again, because let that be the point of failure if there's an overheat situation, which hopefully will finally be resolved this season, getting like the fan stuff all situated. And then I also have a new gasket. So this is for the Miltech 3-inch downpipe. I had taken that apart when we were putting in the new exhaust manifold. So this is a Bartech 1.8 manifold. It kind of repositions the turbo though a little bit, so the downpipe slides over and it doesn't line up with the exhaust, and then it rubs on the drive shaft. So we had to kind of crease the downpipe a little bit to make room for the drive shaft union, which is around here somewhere. Here it is. So this disc is bolted between the transfer case and the drive shaft, and the downpipe sits literally right next to it. And in the case of the new manifold, it was pressing into it, and it would have rubbed if we didn't do something about it. So I'll get some video of that later, but we just creased the downpipe in a little bit, made some room, so we're all good there. Put this new gasket in, put the drive shaft union in. Bada boom, bada bing, everything on the bottom should be good. Then not new, but we need to put the subframe back in. The reason I took the subframe out is all that hose and stuff down there is the power steering cooler. And in the rules, you can do an unlimited power steering cooler. So I think if we get rid of all that mess, do some AN fittings, go into a kind of single tube aluminum cooler, and then back through, that should work. I've never worked with AN fittings, but I did. First, I took the I took the banjo bolt out of the power steering pump, tested what threads that were, found an AN fitting for it, but there's a pretty decent gap here, so it seems silly to just stack washers there to like take up that space, but maybe that's the move, just to see if it holds pressure. I'm not exactly sure. But this used to run through all those crazy pipes and whatnot. But instead, what I'm going to do is I also pulled the two banjo bolts from here, and found that I could get AN fittings metric that went into here, and then I can do AN back out this way. Originally, when I bought these, I bought aluminum ones, and when I went to torque it in, it cracked. Like I thought I had bought plastic by accident. That's how flimsy they were, which understandable. They're probably not meant to be torqued like that. So just note, if you're doing something similar, you probably want to go with the steel ones that you can actually torque and they won't break. But anyway, another piece I have to get is a check valve. So in one of the original bolts where the power steering pressure is coming from, the pressure line from the pump, there's a check ball in the bolt. So what I saw is that you could get AN check valves. I'm not really sure what the pressure should be, but my guess is that it's probably something that, like, if you're turning the wheel and then turn it back the other way, that a pressure pulse doesn't hit the pump. So I would imagine just any strength check ball, just as long as if it feels something, it'll clog that back pressure, is probably fine. And if not, well, we'll blow it up figuring this out. And then coming out, I don't know if this is the in or out, I forget, but whichever one goes back out just goes to the reservoir. So I'm thinking that one will go to a cooler, then up to the reservoir. Reservoir, I'm keeping the current line, which will run, this is all the mess that gets to go, but the line that goes from the reservoir to the pump is this one. And I think I'll just leave this intact. I mean, it's a low pressure line, and sure, I can make it an AN one just to look fun, but one less thing to fuss with, I guess. So anyway, today's goal is, on the last video, I was kind of redoing some of the wiring stuff. I think I want to keep working on that just to get it cleaned up. I don't think I'm going to be doing anything like super amazing, so I might just kind of cut to where this is kind of all done. But when I was redoing the loom, I kind of took wires that were common. So all the injector wires, as it kind of came from the big loom, I just put them into their own sleeve just to keep everything kind of separated. Now that I've laid everything out, there's kind of moments where I'm like, well, there's two here. Like, does it make sense to condense this down into one, or do we just kind of leave that be and just kind of zip tie everything up? There's this line here, which part of it goes to the coolant temp sensor. The other part goes down below to the oil fluid level sensor. This one doesn't have a loom on it yet because there's this ground that breaks out from it, and this ground is supposed to go to the manifold. From as far as I've read and understand, you should have engine grounds all in the same place, because I'm explaining this wrong, but like the way I visualize it is, if you have a ground wire here and a ground wire here, and there's the pulse of current flowing, that distance might be enough that the pulses get back to the ECU at different times, and then it might cause erratic data. Which kind of makes sense. I mean, I'm explaining it wrong, but it makes sense to me, like why that would be. So I have to kind of get this one over here, and I guess that might mean like pulling this back apart to kind of nest this in there, or some jazz. So I don't think that'll be too interesting. I'm just going to be kind of cutting back looms and taping this up to protect it and running it back through there, blah, blah, blah. And that'll probably be most of the day. I don't know if I'm going to put the coolant flange back on yet. I might be able to if the wiring's done, just to bolt it up. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, I think that's enough of a preface. So I'll go ahead and get going here, and then give you guys an update once I make some progress. All right, so it's been about an hour fiddling around with this. So I've just mostly been using a larger width zip tie, kind of starting from kind of the trunk and just tightening everything up, which I'm pretty happy with. And if my memory serves correctly, this is kind of how the original loom sat about. And then, as I was saying, I had that one line that was without a loom. So there's, I think this is the reverse transmission sensor or the speed sensor. It doesn't matter, but it's plugged in back there. So I said, well, if these, if the one for the oil level sensor and this one kind of just go down there in the same time, why not just bunch those together? So I pulled the protective cover off the trans one, combine those two into one. Trans one will poke out, plug in, no problem. And then this is the one that will go to the bottom of the oil pan. This one used to have a protective covering around it that was silver. I'm imagining it was for heat, but I guess it could have also been for signal, just to not get any interference. It doesn't seem likely. I'd imagine it's a heat thing. So you may remember from the last video, I had this wire loom protector, but the problem with it is that the hole for it is so tiny that like no connector fits through there. So you basically would have to like depin it, put this over the wires, and then put the connector back on, and that's way too much work. So I just took a razor and just split the seam of this. So I'm going to wrap that around the wire, zip tape it up, feed both of them down there, plug them both in, done and done. And then I'll just have to kind of figure out now what to do with this ground. So again, I want to get it to here ideally, which means I think I'm going to have to trim this back. I guess I could kind of, you know, run these two next to each other and then feed this into that one and then kind of tee the rest going downward. It'll probably be the move. Again, like the complication is that there's like two different branches coming, and then they start to intermingle wires, and it's just kind of how it is. There was no way to like fix that, so we'll kind of figure that out. But I guess doing it the right way will be getting this ground into here as well. But I think the wire is going to be too short, so I'll have to take this crappily spread apart ground half eye and then just run something new to get plugged in there, which will be good. It'll be a better setup. So I'll keep working on that. I do have a tripod to set up to like watch this stuff, but like it's literally me just cutting zip ties and then putting the other stuff back on. It'd probably be interesting to watch it, and I probably should have set it up, but like I just chose not to. So y'all let me know if that's something that's like worthwhile to see, or if it's just better to have these kind of summaries. I guess for me, when I'm watching YouTube, I like to see the person working, but like also I don't want to like commit to a 2-hour video, you know? So anyway, I'll be back. All right, so here's the finished product. Just wrapped it around and zip tied it up. So I'll feed this back through and then kind of show you that all hooked up. All right, this is going to be an extreme close-up video, but here is that transmission sensor. So we're plugged in there. Here's our T, where we go into the thermal cover that we put, which is good because there's the turbo and I think that one's the oil return line for it, etc. So it's good that we did put that wrap on there, because then it goes down here up against the block, back up to the turbo, and then comes down and plugs into the sensor, which looks like that. And that's a new one that I had put in when I had the engine out and the pan off and whatnot, because I was changing something, the oil tensioner. So there we go. I think that's pretty good. There's a little bit of extra slack, so I'm worried that over time it's going to vibrate and come hang down, but if so, we'll deal with that when it happens. But I think we're good. All right, so certainly we'll have to extend that ground wire. So I just cut the old eyelet that was off of it, stripped it back, got some wire here. I'm gonna connect to that, but before doing that, might as well get the eyelet good. I double check that that eyelet will fit through the bolt, which it will, and then I got a little bit of shrink wrap or heat shrink. So I'm gonna strip the wire back, put that in there, crimp it, do the shrink, heat shrink, and then I'll probably, it's just one wire, so I hate to like wrap that whole wire up with tape and then put the loom covering over it. And it's a ground, so even if it does get cut and it shorts out, it would still work. So I might just put the wire in the loom and kind of call it there. It's like I'm trying to not be lazy, but at the same time, it's like, does wrapping one single wire in tape really need to be? Probably not. Anyway, I'll get that done and catch you back up. All right, so I ran that wire into the loom, got one of my little heat shrink self-soldering tubes to connect the two wires, and then got the eyelet there bolted down. So now I'm just going to zip tie this back closed. I'll probably put just a little plastic loom or wire cover over this, just in the light, but just to go from that junction to the wrap, just to protect it from getting scraped or yanked or pulled or anything. But that should be it. And then I think we're basically done with the wiring. Thank God. It's been fun, but it's also been a whole thing. I will have to kind of deal with some of this extra stuff, which will be for the fan and the grounds and whatnot, but I feel like this stuff is kind of trivial. And then I have to rerun the battery cable into the car or into the engine bay. I think what I'm going to do is maybe put a positive lug somewhere and then do it to that, and then run the wire for the starter from the lug to that. Because right now the positive cable, if the engine sat in here, went right to the starter solenoid, and then everything branched back off from there into the car. So basically the way the car got its positive connection was off the starter. But I think rather than doing that, it might be better to run the positive cable in, run one wire to the starter, and then one wire to the positive kind of distribution box, I guess you could call it. After that, it'll be the ground for the starter, which is pretty trivial. The alternator harness, just getting that set up and kind of hanging out, which I think also gets a positive cable from, I think, the distribution box. But then that'll start to be it. And then the last big project will just be getting the fans wired up to a relay box, which I bought a kind of separate standalone relay and fuse panel. So I think I'll do all the wiring for that in there. But we won't get to that right now. So I'm just going to zip tie that back up, and then I'll be back if I think of something new or exciting to do. All right, so I wanted to get this ground strap hooked back up to the starter. But you can see that it's kind of corroded both on the stud, and the wire's not looking super healthy. So I think I'm going to do, I might even take this off of here as well, but I think I'm just going to hit it with a wire brush on the Dremel, just to kind of get some bare metal showing again and make sure there's a good connection. I didn't have any ground issues back last when I was driving it for last season, so it's probably okay to bolt it back up, but we're here, so why not? So I'll do that. And then what did I just do? I was just kind of removing some clutter, so nothing new to report, but I'll get that going and report back. All right, so those ends cleaned up pretty nicely. I should have done it before and after because they were pretty rough looking, but I did both the kind of ends of this wire and then just cleaned up the end of the bolt as well on both sides, so I think we'll have a nice connection there. So I'll get that bolted up and should be all right. Okay, so ground strap is bolted up. Those are two 13s. I just did them, pretty good hand tight, but didn't torque spec them. Put a little dielectric grease on there to hopefully stop it from rusting up again. Not that it's a big deal. I took the bolt off the rear of the alternator, and this is the alternator harness. Actually lays this way, so this is the positive cable going to it. These two wires go into a connector on the back of the alternator. There's also this connector here, which is what are you? You went to the secondary air pump. I deleted that, so this will just kind of hang out. And then we come to the harness, which raises an interesting question. I don't know where that is. I'll have to do some digging. I wonder if I taped it up thinking it was something I wouldn't need anymore. Or is it, did I do the right thing and lay it out? It's not looking good. I might have loomed that up. Oh, no, you're not it. I kind of feel like I saw that, but I won't trouble you guys with that. I'm going to get that, I think, in. So I'm going to do the same thing. You can see that this is kind of like what the grounds looked like. Let's see. Pretty rough looking. So I'll clean that up and then hit everything with a wire wheel just to make that good. Do the connections and then find the mystery harness. So I'll do that next. All right, so I think I kind of ran out of steam for the day, but I'll kind of walk you through what's done now, and then some next steps or some other stuff that I noticed. Okay, so alternator harness is in. It's all good. I didn't wrap that connector up into the ball of useless wires, which is great. So just kind of re-zip tied all this stuff together, so that's good. The other part of the alternator goes to this wire, which goes to the positive fuse block. And I got to kind of figure out what I'm going to do with this thing. Generally, I want to reuse it, but you can see this wire. It's not going to focus, but this wire is looking pretty rough. It's split. Don't worry about it. Just trust me. And that wire should go to the positive terminal on the starter. So I don't know. Maybe I'll trim this back. Just put a new eyelet on it. And then kind of figure out where that's going to lay and then get the alternator wire plugged back in. Alternatively, I could just create my own block, but because it has these fuses, I mean, might as well just keep using this, right? So we'll settle that later. So that's good. I took the broken coolant flange that I had on here for mock-up off, so that's good. I'll be ready to put the new one on. One thing I did notice, let me see if I can get some light on this. It's not going to be easy to do, is it? Well, you could see here is the shift linkage. So this goes back and forth, and this silicone tube kind of sits on that, and I felt the bottom of it, and it's all scratched up from riding on there. So unfortunately, that's just kind of where it naturally flops. So I just put some marker paint on there to just say that there's a rub there. And when I get this whole thing back together, I'm going to try to zip tie that up and back or something, because it would suck for that to just get cut through in the middle of a race and then be spraying everywhere, and yet another stupid coolant overheating problem with this car. So we'll get that taken care of. What else? I'm switching from the N75 valve, which is basically the boost controller on VW and Audi motors, to a normal Mac type of boost controller. So this hose runs from the wastegate, so I'll be able to kind of plug that in here. Here's the connector for it. So I'm going to kind of mount it in this area here. And then what else runs to that? Then there'll be a boost pressure line from the hard pipe right after the turbo that will also go into there. And then that can meter boost to the wastegate, or just keep it flowing down the hard pipe. In the stock setup, the other end, so the third part of the T, would go back into the intake. I don't want to do that. There's no sense in having that air go back in a standalone ECU. And also, like, that air is really freaking hot. At least whenever I touch the N75, like, I burn my finger on it. So it doesn't really make sense to me to have the intake air coming into the turbo, having all this hot air being dumped into it. So I'm just going to vent that out. Same with the blow-off valve. That normally vents back into the intake. Not going to do that. And in my previous video, that's kind of what I was talking about with this. I think I kind of misspoke a little bit that none of these are used, but one of these branches is for the N75 valve and the other is for the blow-off valve. So two of these I don't need anymore. Another one I had go to the catch can, which used to go to the PCV. And I don't remember what the extra one did. It might have gone to, no, that's not true. Oh, actually, did it go to the secondary air pump? It might have. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to use any of these branches anymore. Is long story short. So what I did is I measured how many inches this is, which is a 2-inch outer diameter pipe will fit in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Vibrant Racing's website, where you can see I already have like some of the silicone couplers and clamps from. I have to order a new clamp from them anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to order a 90-degree pipe. And I'm going to put that on the turbo, which maybe you can kind of see the opening, and just have it come up. And then I think try welding a pipe to that comes up like this. And it'll probably just still be a 2-inch pipe if I can finagle it correctly and it doesn't interfere with any of the lines here. But if I could get that 2-inch pipe to kind of come up right here, then I can, you know, elbow it this way or kind of do whatever I want and get that to the air filter, which kind of seems better to do than this. And what I can do for the union is just cut this and then just make this basically the silicone union that will go between the two. So that'll make good use of this. There is instances where these will collapse, like if you're at, you know, high RPM and the turbo's really sucking, these will just fold in half and shut. As far as I know, I've never had that happen, but and it's not like I've put a bigger turbo, so I doubt in my case that that's going to be a situation. But I just think it would be cleaner to just have one thing going to the turbo, a pipe with no exits, nothing I have to like jankily plug or anything like that, and then get that directly to the air filter and let it do its thing. The one thing I'm not sure about is this. You could tell it goes from pretty narrow to pretty wide. And I guess the one thing I'm not sure about is if I just did a 2-inch pipe the whole way and then into the, I'd have to size it up right before the filter to meet this diameter. But if it's 2 the whole way, is that better? Or do I really need to go like 2, 2.5, 3, like ASAP to be feeding air in? Not exactly sure. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I feel like anything I do is better than having like all this extra garbage going on. So that'll be something I'll probably place that order when I get home. There was an elbow I had already seen that was a 90-degree elbow with like kind of a longer side and then the turn and then pretty short. So I think the short turn, maybe you can go turbo side to keep it close and then that will come up. But if that doesn't work, I'll flip it around and then long side and then come up and then kind of see how that all works. And if that's more or less good, then I can just kind of piece it together from there and then get the air filter on it. Let's see. Power steering is still a thing. I talked about that earlier. Underneath, still have to put the union in and the gasket for the downpipe. Again, it's a little cold out, so I just don't feel like climbing around on the floor. And also my buddy is usually the one who does that part of the car, so we'll wait for him to come and he can suffer. He'll watch this video and then get mad at me, but that's fine. I kind of think that's it. I mean, I'm hoping to like get this car started soon, but we're really not that far away. I think if I plugged in the computer right now and the fuel lines and got power to it and took care of the junction block and got oil in it, in theory, I think it's ready to start. So we're getting pretty close. I mean, the coolant, there's no radiator, of course, but we're pretty close. So hopefully by end of February, this thing starts up. And then I'll be able to take it to the dyno shop, which is the big plan right now, and then just have it ready to go for the season. And hopefully the weather sort of cooperates and stays relatively all right in here. So anyway, we'll call it there. If anybody has any questions or wants further detail on something, more than happy to do that. I think these are just kind of more summary videos of like, hey, here's what I'm touching, here's what I'm doing. But if that inspires a question, I'd be happy to go into like much more detail on anything. So thanks for watching as always, and we'll keep it going.